Hi everyone, I'm Mara. I'm doing my master's in ELTE and you're listening to the Ethology podcast. Welcome to all our listeners who are curious about ethology research. Today we are diving into the fascinating ways our beloved companions influence our lives. Our guest is Laura Gillet, a PhD student at the ELTE Ethology Department, a researcher who has been exploring these questions for years and recently published studies on the topic. Laura has not only been studying these topics for years, but she also has personal experience working as a psychologist in animal-assisted therapy with children, particularly those on the autism spectrum. Her unique perspective combines both scientific research and hands-on experience. We'll take a close look at the pros and cons of having family pets, drawing insights from a study that combined both quantitative and qualitative research methods. Plus, we will discuss how the presence of our furry friends can impact children's development. So whether you are a dog owner considering getting one, or a colleague from ethology, or just fascinated by human-animal relationship, this episode is for you. Laura, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we dive into the research, can you tell us a bit more about your journey into studying dog-human interaction? What sparked your interest in this field, and how has your experience of psychological and animal-assisted therapy shaped your research?
Hi, thank you for having me today. My name is Laura. I'm a third-year PhD student at the Department of Ethology. And I have a background in psychology, and I worked as a psychologist, indeed, for a few years before joining the project here. How did I get there? I always loved horses, actually, from childhood. I also had a fascination for birds and dogs. And studying psychology, I was also interested in how clinical work can be improved, or how can you integrate animals into your work as a clinicist in psychology. That's why I did my practical internships on that topic. In parallel, I was also interested in science and scientific research. So I did 2 internships, mainly a dog project, during my master's, and also field study on cats also after my master. So altogether, when I got this offer on this specific project on the effect of companion dogs on human health, it fitted perfectly my professional and personal interest and background. Yes, so during my work as a psychologist, I got these questions, like I was wondering while I was working, what exactly makes this work with, like me working with animal colleagues, why is it having such an impact on the children? What is going on there that makes it like more effective, or why animals can be therapeutic? And that's why this is also helping me with the research, because I got these questions also from a field perspective.
It's very interesting. You touched multiple fields during your studies. So now I want to ask a few questions about your current research and your publications. So one of your studies focused on how people perceive their dogs in different ways. Some owners see their dogs as family members, others as loyal companions, and some even as a substitute for children. Could you explain what you meant by perceiving their dogs differently, and how this different perspective influences the way owners care for and interact with their dogs?
So in our published article, what we did is that we asked dog owners to rate different roles about how or what role the dogs were playing in their lives. So we asked about human-like roles, so words that you could apply to human connections, such as child, family member, and colleague, and also more like practical roles, so domestic animal or házi állat in Hungarian, or security guard, like guarding dog. We asked owners to rate all of them on a scale 1 to 5. So 1, my dog is not that to me, and 5, it is totally that to me. And then we looked for patterns in their responses, and this is how we came up with 3 main groups based on how they were perceiving the dog. So one group was more focused on the human-like role, so the dog was more humanized in a way. So it was family member and friend, but also like a child, and the more important being in their lives. And for some others, it was fulfilling both practical and human-like roles, so companionship and like a safety role, or made them feel safer, and they were also perceiving the dog as colleagues, so they were most likely working with the dog. And the last group, we interpreted it that they were a bit more distant to the dog, because for them it was a pet, a friend, and a family member, but not like a child substitute, and not like very central in their lives, like in comparison to the other groups of owners. In this study, we didn't find any associations with the problematic behavior of the dog, so we couldn't conclude that attributing certain roles or humanizing these companion dogs would lead to welfare issues. But we did find some characteristics associated with this. For instance, more humanized perception of the dog was associated with a younger age. So we assume that there's a generational shift in how we perceive dogs in society. And we also found that spending a lot of time together with the dog every day, and also living indoors with the dogs, so most likely being in a bigger city or like a smaller place, which would result in closer physical proximity and more time spent together. This is also connected with humanizing the dogs.
Can I ask how many people take part in this research?
In this one, it was about 800 Hungarian dog owners. And we collected the answers through social media, because we have a big social media presence. This is also a methodological issue that we get answers from a very specific subgroup of dog owners. So we know that those who are already interested in dog ethology and willing to share their experiences with us, this introduces a bias, because they will most likely have a good relationship with the dog and take well care of the dog in comparison to those people who have a dog in the garden and don't really do anything with the dog. So why would they go on Facebook and answer or usually quite long questionnaires? This is maybe also why we found what we found, that there were no associations, like negative association with welfare, because we already ask questions to those dedicated owners who already take care of the dog properly, so this doesn't result in welfare issues.
So from a statistical point of view, was there any difference between the genders?
In the current study, we had to exclude gender from the analysis, because this is another problem we have in such studies. It's mostly women answering our questionnaires. So here we had, I think, 80 to 90% of women. So we couldn't, even if we wanted to compare, we didn't have enough men to make the comparison. But in other studies, so not this one and not the ones I've personally conducted, but in the literature, we kind of know that women are more involved than men in caring for the dog, and also more likely to build a stronger emotional connection with dogs, especially the young women who don't have children and who don't have a partner. This is the intuition we have, and we have some facts to back this up. but we aim to explore this further, like the role of gender in how dogs are perceived in society and companion animals in general.
It's a good thing that you mentioned children, because another one of your studies were focusing on how having a pet affects children in a family. Can you tell me more about this research? What are the pros and cons of having a family pet when you're also a parent?
So in this paper, which was a review, I read a lot of literature on the topic, on how children and dogs' interactions can influence the development of children and also the place of the dog in the family system. So typically these studies compare children who have dogs at home to children who don't. And these are called cross-sectional studies. So from there we cannot infer any causal link. The groups, so they were not assigned randomly that this child will have a dog at home and this child won't. So we know there are other factors that may be associated with why dogs have an effect on children, because there are a lot of confounding variables here. But in these studies, what they do is that they ask, when in case of young children, they ask the parents to fill questionnaires. There was also a study where the researcher did interviews with children to ask them about their pet dogs at home, and they found many effects on the child development. So studies found that having a dog at home has a positive effect on the social and emotional development of children through like multiple ways. So children learn how to regulate their emotions. They learned how to adjust to another being and decode nonverbal signals. It's also stimulating the imagination of the child, because they get to play together with the dog, and also the dog doesn't speak, so children make up these narratives to explain the behavior. It is also developing empathy and pro-sociality skills. It is important to say here that it is more like the relationship with the dog that is important, and not just the dog exists in the household, because it's this attachment that will be created between the child and the dog that will have these positive effects, and not just being exposed to a dog. And a positive, strong emotional relationship leads to that kind of effect, because you need this emotional connection to develop the empathy towards the dog, and wanting to provide good care and being attached to the dog.
So in this study of yours, I read that it can also have an effect on the children's reading skills. Can you explain how is it possible and how is it affecting the reading skills?
Yes, so there's this other focus in these studies that is on cognitive skills development, and reading skills are one of them. So these studies are mostly experimental or quasi-experimental, because in that case it's easier to decide who will get into the dog group. So what they do is that researchers go to a school, they take a class, and they randomly assign children to the dog group versus the control group. So in the dog group, children will receive animal-assisted interventions, or often focusing on reading skills. And what they found is that it's not just because there's a dog in the classroom that you will have an effect, but the dog usually is a source of motivation for learning. So, for instance, they have these exercises where they are reading to the dog, or they are reading or writing things about the dog that is here. So they have this extra motivation to please the dog or share a nice moment with the dog. Another important effect is that it's releasing the stress. So it has a buffer effect on stress. Petting the dog during this stress-inducing situation that can be learning or like during an exam at school, this is really helping to release the tension, lower the blood pressure, and that's also why it can have a positive effect on the performance.
Does it have any negative effect on children, or do you have a family pet? And if it's so, then what?
Of course, there are some negative sides, and this is also the reason why I think families should really think through before getting a dog for the child. So maybe in some cases, the child won't be ready to have the responsibility to care for the dog, so the parents will have to take over. There's sometimes a risk that parental attention is divided, especially if there are multiple children or the child or the dog is young and you have to put more effort into the education. So the parents will have to handle, like, let's say a puppy and a child, then it can have a negative effect on the child because they would like this extra attention that is given to the dog. There's also the physical health risk, because we know that like the being exposed to a dog from a young age can lead to allergies development or child asthma and other types of zoonoses. There's also, of course, a big risk, especially with young children, that is biting. So even really friendly, nice dogs can bite if the situation is stressful, like super stressful for them, and they give warnings, but the child is not able to read them or was not taught to read them. So for instance, stealing the dog's toy or touching the dog's food, or grabbing the ears, grabbing the tail, this can be really uncomfortable for the dog. And then the dog will send signals and growl, for instance, but some children would find it funny, or they are looking for this to generate a reaction in the dog, except that usually the last result of the dog is to bite, like really leave me alone. And this is where this can be really dangerous for the child, because they are smaller, they can easily get bitten in the face or at really weak points compared to like a tall adult. It's already dangerous, but less than in a smaller human. And there's also the accidents or the injuries that are no one's fault really, but just the dog is, especially big dogs, they can just push children, or they are playing, and accident can happen. So this is very important to educate families about this too, and children especially. Another challenge that parents should consider when getting a dog for the child is how to handle the dog's passing, especially when children are young and they don't apprehend death the same way as adults do. So this has to be processed in a way that is not traumatic for the child. And there's also another emotional risk, let's say, of having a dog is or to being exposed to dogs in a young age, is that negative experiences can result in phobias, and this can be more difficult to treat as an adult. So this is really important to provide the safest environment possible for child-dog interactions.
Generally speaking, what would you say? What are the hardships in these type of studies, what you are making?
So the biggest hardship is, as I mentioned earlier, is to find participants to answer the questionnaires, and especially participants with a diverse background and not only a specific subgroup, but getting access to the general population of dog owners, even those who are not really familiar with social media or with online questionnaires. So this is a challenge for sure. We also have a hard time to recruit male participants. So this is also difficult to make conclusions about the role of gender in dog keeping practices and attitudes because of that.
So, as we're talking about it, if any of our listeners want to join in our research, we are always looking for new participants and dog owners. So, if you would like to help us in our studies and researches, follow us in the Family Dog Project, and you can see our newest projects where we are looking for participants. So, generally speaking, in an adult's life, what can be the pros and cons of having a family pet, a dog?
So in our study, we found that the pros were much bigger than the cons. Among them, we had the main one was the emotional and mental health positive effect of having a dog. Relationship qualities provides a source of unconditional support and love, which helps people to get through difficult events in their lives and give them a motivation to get up in the morning. This was the most cited benefit, basically. And the second biggest benefit was about the physical health. So having a dog really promotes physical activity with walking and brings energy into daily life and connects you with outdoors, nature, and you get to share activities with the dog, and some people do sports with their dog, which is a source of motivation to perform sports and try new things because you have someone to share it with. The last aspect that was not that frequently mentioned, but I think it's an important one, is the social aspects. Even in therapeutic settings, we know that having an animal helps connecting with each other, as humans. Animals, and especially dogs, because of their social skills, they can be really good social lubricants. So you go out walking your dog and you meet another dog owner and you create bonds with these people because you meet them regularly, and then you have this feeling of belonging to a community that shares the same values as you and the same love for dogs than you. And it's also, I think it can add meaning to your life and also give you a way to contribute to society if you commit to rescuing dogs, for instance, or being involved in charity that is helping animals. And we also found that for some people it's help building family cohesion. As for the cons, we found two main ones. The first one was the emotional hardship of grieving the dog, because in most cases the dog will pass before the owner. And the second one that was really, really frequently mentioned is the financial costs, especially vet care and feeding the dog.
So before we wrap it up, let's summarize some key takeaways for our listeners. So firstly, we learned that dog plays different roles in human life, from companions to family members, or even substitute for children, or in some cases colleagues. We also learned that while having a dog has a lot of pros like emotional, physical and social benefits, they can also come with some responsibilities, financial cost and potential challenges. So we also learned that children can benefit greatly from growing up with a family dog. So based on all this, do you want to add anything for the key takeaways?
No, you summarized it really well.
Thank you so much. So Laura, for our last question, I'm very curious about what are the open questions? What are we still need to research about these topics?
To be honest, we have a long list of topics we want to investigate next. We want to, for instance, connect human-like roles of dogs to anthropomorphic attitudes. So because you think of your dog as a child's substitute, does it mean that you attribute the same cognitive and social skills to the dog as you would to a human child? So these are actually two different questions, and we are interested in that. And how does it translate into certain behaviors, such as spoiling behaviors, for example, or treating the dog as what are the determinants of treating dogs as children in some extreme cases where you see dogs pushed in baby strollers and overfed, so which is leading to obesity in many companion dogs. Another important area of research is to conduct cross-cultural comparisons, because we know that the cultural background and the values within one culture influence the practices and the attitudes a lot. So this is also another direction we are taking now.
Thank you, Laura. This has been such an insightful discussion. So thank you so much for joining us today. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with fellow dog lovers and listen to our other podcast episodes. You can follow us on Facebook, where you can read newest studies, and TikTok or Instagram, where you can peek into the Ethology Department everyday life. See you next time.
Thank you, Tamara. See you next time.